So if you have the belief that you're not good enough, it's like it's going to really hold on to those stories every time we messed up, every time we dropped the ball or whatever. Those are the ones that it really remembers. It doesn't remember all the times that we succeeded necessarily.
Hello and welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton and I am super pumped for today's episode where I will talk with Zach. He is someone I've just happened upon recently through my yoga studies. A mutual friend in my yoga class told me about him and how his breathwork has just changed her life. And I felt called to go to his 4-day retreat in Sedona, Arizona, where he lives. It was really life-changing. I learned a lot about breath, going within. And let me just tell you, after I went through that 4-day retreat, I'm like, I got to interview this guy because he just has this inner reservoir of understanding and awareness that few people I meet do. And actually, he's a really, really awakened male. And I don't say that in a sexist way, just that he's just very in touch with his intuition and his healing gifts, which are typically more on the feminine nurturing side. He's just a strong male. So it's nice to see him stand in that power. You're going to love this discussion because we get really deep around what it means to be awake and aware, and actually what the process of awakening means, how to know if you're in it, and how to stay in it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I've got Zach Rehder. Is that how you say your last name, by the way, Zach?
Rehder.
Yes, he is someone that I really have been I could say, latching onto lately in terms of what he brings to the field of awakening. And I've been to lots of trainings. I've been to lots of seminars over the years. I've just really been around the block with this. And his methods and the way that he teaches the process of awakening and breath and mindfulness and presence is really, really powerful. I actually just attended a retreat that he did in Sedona, a 4-day retreat. I don't remember the name of it. What did we decide it was called?
Yeah, we were joking about that in the retreat.
Something about the unlimited soul or something. And that's sort of up for me right now in terms of like, what is possible? What have we put limits on with human potential, and what is actually possible, not in like an afterlife case, but now, and what can we bring to our own soul's evolution? So I kind of see him as this evolutionary force around what that is. And I found him through a friend of a friend, and it was just the right timing for me to climb into what he's teaching. So Zach, welcome. And I think what would be really cool for us to sort of bring people to in terms of knowing a little bit more about you and kind of your story is to tell us how you came maybe to your own awakening and what that meant for you.
Okay, yeah, I love the word awakening. It's to wake up. I remind people that we have these wonderful minds. They're great, but they're also very limited as well. They need beginnings and endings. They need a box. And when we're speaking of, an awakening is usually, it's like we could say like a waking up from a belief system, or waking up from an understanding or a pattern, or it's like realizing that we are something more than we thought we were. Mm-hmm. And each and every person has already probably done that so many times, little ones all the time, where it's like, wait, I realize like, you know what? I don't fit into this anymore. It's like I can't keep stuffing myself. It's like, you know what? People can't treat me like this anymore. It's like we could call all of those like it's a little awakening. That was the day that I didn't let people disrespect me like that anymore, or on and on and on. I'm always inviting everyone into their truth, into this incredible connection. It's like who we really are is just so beyond anything that any of our minds can understand. And so I've always watched the world. It's almost like the world is always assisting in that, us in that as well. And so,
yeah,
it's kind of like what's driving you crazy, like what's pushing our buttons right now, what's challenging us, what's triggering us is often usually the place that's asking for us to wake up there. It's asking for us to be more present, to open up in this place that we've been closed off to feel this thing we didn't want to feel, to look at this thing we didn't want to look at. And when we do that, it's, just the most profound experience, profound shifts. It's like we realize, it's like we continue to discover that everything that we were looking for was already here. We were maybe just asleep here. We were off in some story. We were off in some limited belief system of who we thought we were instead of this present moment.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the Rumi quote, you are what you are seeking, or what you're seeking is seeking you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how do you get to a place? I think that most people, we know we have these thoughts. We know we have these patterns we've inherited from family systems, whether it's genetic or situational. We know that we ascribe probably to some beliefs on the subconscious level that aren't serving us. How do you bring that to your awareness, literally, or your consciousness, so that you can get rid of it? What is sort of that? I mean, I have my thoughts around that. I think that's where you and I share this passion around retreats and events and seminars and workshops, because you can kind of hold the space as a facilitator to allow where maybe people in their everyday lives don't have or don't feel safe enough. Maybe we can give them those tools, but maybe they don't feel safe enough to, number one, completely shine a flashlight on what those patterns and beliefs and thoughts are, or number two, be able to release them in a way that feels like they're not going to go completely into fight or flight and shut down.
Yeah. So on that, it's kind of like, we hear things like this and it's like, I want to go find all the places that I'm stuck and open that up. And it's the thing I love to remind people is like, we don't have to go find it. It's like, we don't have to go do it, because it's like, if it's not up right now, it's like, if there's not something like that's currently inviting you into something, it's not time.
So it's already there. It's already manifesting as some kind of a symptom.
Yeah, there's some sort of symptom condition. It's like something that's getting our attention. It's like, that's what's going on. But if it's like, if we're, maybe money is challenging us right now, but it's like, no, but I'm still working on my whatever, my relationship with somebody. That's what I'd rather focus on. It's like, it's like the universe is always giving us the thing that would serve us the most right now, and the thing that it's time for as well. And so we get on these things. I'm going to fix myself, and that's one of the biggest misunderstandings about this awakening, this self growth. It's like there's nothing to fix, but we will always discover more. We will always wake up even more, and so we can look back and appreciate this, like, wow, this tremendous journey and this tremendous growth that we've probably experienced. And we didn't have to figure it out. We didn't have to go do it. It's like, it's always coming to you.
It's sort of like, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the law of attraction in a way. And I kind of get sick of that term because it's really multifaceted, the law of attraction. But what you're saying is we need not look very far. It's either showing up maybe in a relationship, whatever that belief is. It's showing up in the body. It continues to reveal itself in many forms. It's cloaked many ways. So once you kind of start to really wake up and kind of look with new eyes at how that might be something, like you're the common denominator.
Yeah.
It's not really other people, right?
So far, it's never been about other people.
Dang it.
No, maybe one day it will. Maybe it'll be, oh my gosh, I finally found a situation where I could totally blame it on someone else. But so far, it's never been about anybody else.
They're just really mirrors, aren't they? They're just reflecting back to us what we really need to heal.
And yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like the universe working through other people. Again, I remind people, it's like, if we're going to do that, that's such a common story. Every ego does it. It's like this belief that we're not good enough, or that we're wrong, or any of that. It's like, if we're going to do that belief system, if we're going to live in that belief system, it's almost like we require someone out there to show it to us. And so it's like, if I could live in this belief system that I'm wrong all the time, but life always works for me, it's like nobody ever bothers me. It's like, then I would never really get to really be with it and feel it and heal it. And so luckily we have this incredible universe that has a bunch of people in the world telling me I'm wrong, showing me that I already believe that, giving me the opportunity to really be and feel and open up to that.
Yeah, so it's like a gift. All the time there's these gifts showing up in the form of dysfunction.
Yeah.
Or seeming dysfunction. But really it's just an opportunity or an invitation to look deeper. So, so let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the pattern. I woke up. I'm attracting addicts into my life, or I'm in lots of codependent relationships, or I'm this or that, or like my parents were, whatever. And so you're like, okay, this is happening. Now what?
Yeah. So it's almost like that. So we wake up and we see a pattern. It's like seeing the pattern is already changing the pattern.
Mhm.
Judging the pattern is locking the pattern in place.
Oh my heavens to Betsy, that's awesome.
And
I mean,
so,
that's seriously a truth bomb. So
yeah,
how do you not
absolutely.
judge it?
Well, that you have a mind that's judging it. And so that's kind of the language that the mind speaks. And so we don't ever get a mind not to judge. It's like that's the language that it speaks. It categorizes everything. Everything is good or bad. Everything is right or wrong. It's like it judges absolutely everything. And so that's probably behind everything. The biggest relationship the most profound, the relationship that changes everything is like, how addicted to the mind are we? How much are we letting the mind run the show or drive the car? And it's like, so it's always going to judge. And so we look at it's like when we're being with anything through the mind, it's locking in place what we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that crossover spiritually can be really dangerous because the mind tells us that God is sitting on some judgment seat trying to catch us in something wrong, and we really internalize that like self-monitoring around shame and judgment.
Yeah. So when we see a pattern, it's like absolutely we have a mind that's going to judge it, but I often remind people too, because sometimes it's like harsh when, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this was going on, and we can tend to be hard on ourselves, and it's like, listen, the ego is just a collection of habits and patterns. Like it's a collection of those things. It's like if it wasn't doing that one, it would be doing another one, and where we've been asleep there, where we haven't been awake to the pattern, it's like it's been this unconscious driving force that has us operating without choice. When you're aware of the pattern, it's okay. You said codependent relationships. It's like, okay, recognize that as a pattern. And it's not a good pattern. It's not a bad pattern. It's just a pattern. And so the next time in relationship, it's like we look at it. It's like we recognize there's a pattern there for that. And that is a choice that I can make. And that choice is still okay, but also to realize that I have another choice as well, that we can do this so many different ways.
Yeah, so if you were kind of taking a first line of defense or offense, even around like what's the starting point to once you know and see the pattern, and okay, how do coming into a place of non-judgment, how do you maintain that space? How do you bring yourself back into the awareness of like, okay, this is just my ego talking, this is just the mind, and honoring the mind that it's kind of doing its work in you or its job, but here's the real thing over here. Here's my soul. Here's my true presence, my true connection to the divine and the universe, whatever. How do you have that maybe speak louder in your being than the ego mind?
Yeah. So a few things. It's like, well, we notice what they feel like. It's like, what does it feel like when I'm operating from the ego, and what does it feel like when I'm operating from my truth or my heart or my being, whatever we want to call that. That's a good sign that it's like to really start paying attention. It's like when people are operating from the ego or the mind, it's like there's usually a disconnection from the breath, and so they're usually breathing either very shallow or holding the breath. There's always a tension that shows up in the body with it as well. It's like, notice if we go and like worry about what's going to happen next month, it's totally someplace else. It's just imagination, and it shows up. There's a tension. There's a smallness. There's a contraction. It's like all these things that we start feeling, and so we start to get really familiar with like, hey, what does it feel like when I'm really connected, and when this is coming from my truth, and what does it feel like when I'm coming from my mind?
Mm.
And everyone is always connected. Everyone is totally psychic and intuitive and aware, and everyone has already had so many of those experiences where we followed our knowing. It's like, hey, how did you know to do that? It's like, I don't know, I just knew. It's like nobody can even describe it either, because it is bigger than the mind, and so it doesn't come through those channels. It's not understood. It's like I just knew not to go there, or I just knew
Mhm.
to do that,
Mhm.
and there's no explaining it. And so our intuition, our knowing doesn't necessarily speak English. In fact, usually it doesn't, unless it's one of those ones where you really need to get it right now.
Yeah.
But because it even does too. It's like, well, if that's the only way that you are gonna like get this, it will speak English to you, and so, or whatever language you speak. It's like we keep meeting this. Like, oh my gosh, what does it mean? What does it feel like when I'm following my heart? When I'm following my knowing? It's like, wait, there's a peace, there's an ease, there's just something that even though it might seem terrifying sometimes, and there's all these stories why not to do it, I can't not do it.
So it's more expansive because you talk about, when we hold breath and we're in places of tension and high stress, we really like are in this like shrinking mode
Yeah,
energetically.
yeah, yeah.
And what you're saying is when we tune into our heart and we sort of honor that intuitive knowing, it's more expansive. It's more of an opening to what's possible in our potentiality.
Absolutely. We have some wonderful helpers that are always with us that let us know too. Like I remind everyone that's like stress, anxiety, overwhelm, all of these are just signs that we're not present and we're not breathing.
Hmm.
So we're trying to figure out how we're gonna pay the mortgage at the end of the month. And it's like, do you have to pay the mortgage right now? No. Well, relax.
Is there a policeman showing up at your door with an eviction notice right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And so it's like, wait, that is so stressful because you're off in your imagination instead of in the truth of right now.
Mm.
Or we're off in the past that it's really funny that the past that we remember, and how I love pointing out to people how bad our memories are and how subjective our memories are. And our memories are kind of, they're held in place by a mind that's always trying to prove itself correctly. So, that's always trying to prove all of its points of view to be correct. And so that's, it remembers the thing that supports its own belief systems. It's like
Mm.
our minds only remember what supports this identity that it has created.
Yeah, that reminds me. The place in the brain called the reticular activating system kind of acts as your personal assistant to gather evidence for what you already believe. So,
Yeah,
like, it puts you on hyper alert to, it's kind of like scanning all your sensory information and putting you on hyper alert. So, like, if you just bought a red car, it's being like, oh, look at that red car. You should notice that where it was before you wouldn't have. So if your subconscious beliefs or even your conscious beliefs are oriented a certain way, it's going to keep making you right about that thing. It's going to keep
totally.
gathering evidence for you.
So if you have the belief that you're not good enough, it's like it's going to really hold on to those stories every time we messed up. Every time we drop the ball or whatever, it's like those are the ones that it really remembers. It doesn't remember all the times that we succeeded necessarily.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And that can get really, I think, where we become at the mercy of our programs versus more proactive around putting new programming in. So you're talking about breath, which I don't know why I didn't even awaken to this sooner about breath, but it's only been within the last year and a half. After all of my years of studying about neuroscience and psychology and holistic psychology, I really didn't understand the power of breath until just the last year and a half. I actually have a really good friend, and he has a photographic memory, and he goes all over the country and learns from the top experts, and he spends in upwards of tens of thousands at some of these seminars he goes to, and world renowned specialists in the fields of neuroscience and psychology and all of that. And he said they all say it's about breath now. They're all saying that that's where it is. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So breath, what does that mean to you? What is breath? I mean, obviously it's oxygen coming in and out of your lungs. How does breath, first of all, define it in your own way, in your own special way, and then tell us about what it's actually doing for you to get out of the ego judgment, I'm not worthy, what its job is for us spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah, wow, that's a huge question
I know.
that I could never answer.
Like just give us to the secrets to the universe. That would really be good.
Yeah, just secrets of the universe. Totally. So the breath has always been one of my favorite tools. I've been a healer for a long time, and I would just I would always watch again. It's like when we're here and present, it's like, hey, there's a connection to the breath, and when we've checked out, when we're someplace else, and so it's almost like the deeper into a thought we are, and the less present and aware of what's really happening this moment right now. And so there's always a disconnection from the breath. And so I would always notice it's like anytime someone's on the edge of a change, on the edge of an opening of a new possibility, maybe a healing, it's like there's a tendency to check out and hold the breath. And so when in my classes still to this day, like every time I'm doing anything, I'm always reminding everyone to breathe, because I can always, like, I feel other people's bodies. I feel it's like when the energy is moving, everything is healing, everything's coming back into alignment. But when we stop the energy, it's like when I feel the energy stop, it's always because someone's holding their breath. And so, I'm reminding people to hold their breath. And, obviously I could talk for a really long time about it.
I kind of see breath as the pathway to direct experience, to what's true and real.
Well, it's a beautiful tool to be present with, because you can only take a breath right now. You cannot take a breath yesterday, and you can't take a breath tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so we do start spending more time connecting to the breath, and it's like we do start to become more and more present the more and more time that we're spending with it. And then, I lead some practices that you're aware of. That's like, okay, doing some different breath practices that really turn it up and really, really open up some new possibilities, really get some stuff out of the way, really open some space for big release, for big letting go, for big healing. And so, we get the breath is oxygen. It's a physical thing, but there's also so much more to it as well. In all the ancient traditions, the spirituality and yoga, everything, it's like, the word for breath and spirit was often the same word. And so there's so much more going on to breath, and most people are very disconnected from it, or not even aware that it's going on. And so a lot of times when I first start working with someone, we'll really open up this relationship to the breath, and then the next days they realize, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I hold my breath like 1,000 times a day. And I'm like, well, beautiful. That's an amazing awareness, because now you can do something about it. Now we catch ourselves holding our breath, and when we go back and we take a few deep breaths, and we open that up, and we get everything moving again.
I would love to share the experience I had at your retreat with breath. I think it's fitting for what you just shared about, so people, there's a spiritual pathway around it. There's a lot of symbolism, I guess you could say, in ancient texts and scripture. What I experienced, I think, after the third or fourth time we did a breath process with you, we're laying on our mats, and I all of a sudden, and this is probably maybe 10, 15 minutes in, I just somewhere in this like deep part of my being, I realized I kept hearing in my mind as I was doing the breath work, I was getting an image of what I've been taught about Adam and Eve. like Eve came second, like she was this like, oh, well, God breathed the breath of life into Adam, but, then Eve came afterward. How did she come about? Well, she's just from his rib, right? So I kind of was like looking at that. Why are Adam and Eve coming up right now while I'm doing the breath? And then it was like breath of life. I didn't feel like I had a direct connection to the breath of life. I thought that I was sort of a second seat creation that just got it by osmosis. And then it just became, and then I just breathed into it. And I know you knew that I was just guttural sobbing, like, oh my word. And it was just deep in there. And then when I continued to breathe around it, the new belief that came in, and the healing, because I released it, and the new belief that came in is, no, this is you. You are the breath. And then it was like, oh, there's a female deity. It wasn't just, a male God breathing into Adam. It was the mother is the breath, the divine mother, the feminine. And then it just opened up something in me. I was like, and I'm trying to explain it in English. Like you said, there's no language for, it was just, I'm trying to explain the knowing I had around breath. And for me, that was super powerful, because I now internalize it, and it was part of me now. It wasn't just some kind of religious programming that got handed to me. I actually had a direct experience with breath and what it meant for me, for the feminine. So, and I shared that with the group after, and And I thought, wow, how many things are we holding that we're not aware of that are just so deep that are contributing to these constrictions in our being?
Well, I think there's a beautiful piece to that as well. Like what if we all came in and took on a bunch of these silly belief systems and misunderstandings of the universe again to go and live them, to to totally buy into them, to think they were real, only and then to wake up to them. And it was
Hmm.
like even you, it's like when you tapped into that, you woke up to that and you shared your experience with the group. It's almost like everyone got something even deeper from that.
Hmm. Well, and I was getting so much from the other participants and their aha moments and their awakenings. And it's almost like it diminishes when you share it because it is about that which transcends thought. Okay, so with these states of anxiousness or stress, anxiety, depression, whatever, as like a daily practice. I mean, because like we're saying, now I awaken to this whole breath of life thing. I'm like, oh, it's part of me, it's in me, it always was there. And just kind of always having this soul craving to continue to have direct experience and knowing that maybe that's not the earthly path. Maybe it's not practical, nor is it efficacious for us always to be in these suspended states of knowing at all times. Because I know you, as woke as my kids say, they like that word, as woke as you are, right? You still, there's just no way to manage that ego and have it not continue to protect you, keep you safe, run you. What's kind of like this, I guess, management process, or can kind of take us through what you do in the life of you in a mindful, I guess, mindful state. I even struggle with the word mindful because that comes back to the mind, full of the mind, um, in a place of, as opposed to a place of more like experiential, like feeling who you are. Am I making any sense at all? Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
like
no,
knowing who you
I
are,
can
and then
jump into
there's
that. Yeah. So as far as touching, I remind everyone, it's like we have those spiritual experiences, those experiences we can't put into words. It's like, why does that feel so good? Because that's who you really are. That's always who you really are. You can't not be that. And we also came and jumped in and did this human experience for a while as well. So when we talk about you're talking about like the sadness or the depression. It's like all of these things. It's like the reason those are so miserable is because people don't understand. It's like the minds cannot understand that that's just who you are too.
mm,
And so we don't ever like, there's this idea. I know I had this idea. It's like, you know what, if I get spiritual enough, if I get enlightened enough or whatever, then I'm never going to experience these emotions that I don't like to feel. And it's quite the opposite. It's like when you realize that when we open up, it's like all of us are going to experience depression again because depression is a part of us. It's a part of humanity. We're also super, super aware. And so not only, it might not even be our depression that we're experiencing, but we are so incredibly aware. We're always tapping in and feeling all the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that's going on in everyone else around us. So,
mm,
so we don't ever, it's like we don't ever overcome it. And it's that game of trying to overcome it, which is the resistance that's making it so miserable.
mm.
And
Like
so,
overcoming this evil natural flesh body we have.
yeah, it would be like, if somebody made their left leg wrong and they were always constantly trying to get rid of, if they were ashamed of their left leg and they wanted to get rid of their left leg, it's like, I bet you in a not too long of a period of time, you would start to have conditions and issues showing up in your left leg
Mm,
because we're trying to disconnect from a part of us.
mm,
And so that's it, these emotions of it's basically the mind has put all these emotions, they're either good or they're bad, and all the bad emotions, well, I often ask people this, it's like, which one's better, happiness or sadness? And most people will say happiness, and it's like, why? Well, it feels better. It's like, wait a minute. It's like when you're meeting something that is in the good category, it's like if we're meeting it through judgment, it's a good category. It's like it's more welcome to be here. We're more open to it. We're meeting something in the bad category. It's like, here's sadness. I don't want it to be here. I'm more closed off to it. What if it was never actually about happiness or sadness, but it was about how open or closed we are?
mm. Love that.
And so it feels really good to be open because that's our true nature. It does not feel good at all to be closed because that's not our nature. And so
That,
we start to look at part of a lot of the work that I take people through is it's like, let's be with what you didn't want to look at. That is where you are going to find everything that you're looking for, is in the things you didn't want to look at. You're going to find everything you were looking for in the things that you didn't want to feel, because we open up, we let those in, we feel them, and everything changes. It's like we get back more. We just got back another leg. We get
yeah.
back like more of ourselves. It's like we're more connected. We are like, it's like everything changes. And so I still experience all emotions, and especially I work with people all the time. Like that's one of the people tell me, I always hear like how much space I hold for people or whatever. And it's like, I am willing to feel what anybody else is feeling. And so that's part of it. It's like, no matter what someone's going through, I'm willing to feel it too.
That's just the true empathy and compassion. I think that the most beautiful spiritual teachers and leaders I think of Christ, he went to the things that were super uncomfortable, like leprosy, people taken in adultery, like all these, people dripping with diseases of all forms, the outcasts. I think we get, and this was brought up at your retreat, like spiritual bypassing, where we
Yeah.
think, and that kind of plays into what you were saying about, if my whole job is just to overcome this evil natural man in me, this, flesh, I miss the beauty of humanity and the full range of human emotion, and how I can go to a place of suffering, but still have presence, right? Not totally disassociate from my true sovereign self.
Yeah.
Not leave my body, but stay present in the suffering with true compassion or my own process. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
Well, when we talk about the suffering, let's actually separate. Let's make those. It's like pain and suffering. It's like everyone experiences pain. Suffering is optional.
mm,
Everyone experiences pain. Suffering is optional. It's like if you're fighting against the pain, if you're pretending that the pain should be not, that you should be feeling a different way than you're feeling right now, you're pretending your life should look a different way than it does right now, then we're in the suffering.
yeah. So suffering would be sort of a state of disconnection.
Yeah, yeah. We could say that.
When one of the biggest ahas, and it came out of your mouth, and I don't know if you like are the author of this statement. If you are, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. When we were kind of processing as a group at one point towards the tail end of your retreat, and somebody was talking about something that they were kind of grappling with. And I think that as a group, our collective like thing we were processing is disconnecting, or maybe not just running our lives on pleasing other people or worried about what they think, but just maintaining that our own voice, our own whatever, our own soul sovereignty. But when somebody mentioned that, and you said intuition is not a democracy. I believe that was the statement. Do you remember saying that?
I don't.
Well, I wrote it down and I was like, wow, like, yeah, there is no pervasive one size fits all
Yeah.
kind of truth for collective humanity other than love, right?
Yeah, yeah. I love that. It's coming back to me now. Maybe I did say something like that. Yeah. Uh,
In other
I
words, we don't have to, just because we get an aha or a knowing, or we come into a place of an awakening, it's for us, it's sacred to us, it's not a democracy. And because it is so hard to explain to people with word and language, it kind of like just needs to be what it is, and it's not out there for everyone to vote on, but I know it. I,
yeah.
I know it in my being.
Yeah, and your truth right now is your truth right now,
Mm.
because we've already come through so many levels, so many cycles of like, well, that used to be true for me and now it's not right now. And so everyone is in their own beautiful journey on their own like paths, and it's like everyone's just so unique. And so Yeah, it's like this intuition. And so it really is. It's like nobody out there nobody can tell you what's true for you. It's like everybody else agrees this is what's true. It's like I don't care what everyone else agrees on. It's like what's true for me? What do I know? What is honoring me right now?
Yeah, and you look at what I love about breath is it's fluid, it has flow, and it brings new understandings with it and new levels of awareness based on the openness you're talking about. It feels like we tend to look at, ancient writings, even scripture sometimes, or as something that is, yeah, I mean, there are pieces to it that are always true, but it was true for that time. It was frozen in that culture. And if we close ourselves to what could come through us now, in our body, with me as a mother in 2019, just turning 50, and like in my life station in this moment on the freeway in my car, that is at a whole different level of knowing for me spiritually, emotionally and physically, than to go read something that some ancient sage or scholar or even prophet wrote that really isn't relevant to my now.
Well, again, it's like the words are never going to be able to capture the truth.
Mm,
And so it's like the words were always to point at something. The words were always to remind you something that you already know.
mm,
But again, we didn't have words for what you really knew because it's like it was too big. It was too big to fit into like the contextual reality of the mind.
right.
And so yes, we can say all is love all day long, but those are just words. And we've all actually, I think everyone at some point has absolutely experienced, because it's our nature. It's like, oh my God, that's what they're talking about. All is love, or whatever the teaching of the words were. It's like, oh, okay, this is what the teacher was talking about. And then I appreciate all the different teachers and all the different ways things can be said. And like, I think it's fascinating sometimes. It's like, I really like how that person said that. I've never, seen it like that, like the direction that they took or the way that they were looking at it through. It's like that's a beautiful way to look at it. But it's not the word. The words are not what we were looking at. The words were just pointing to what we were looking at.
And I think even going back to like, I guess some of the most ancient records we have, even you could go back to like the Bible, in the very, very beginning was the word, and the word was with God. Like, what is the word? It's probably has a lot to do with that direct experience. It's not language,
Yeah.
it's sound, it's light, it's vibration, it's breath, it's movement, it's flow, it's oneness. And yeah, I think we just get so locked into the explanation of, because we think, oh, okay, I should do this. I need to overcome this. This part of me is broken or what have you. And kind of what you're saying and what you're exploring is it's all of it. We're all of it.
Yes.
And that is honestly more powerful than just staying in a place of I've overcome, I'm enlightened now. I get it. No
Yeah.
more work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my favorite practices that I've been giving people lately, like again, to embody more truth, more connection. I love this question, like, what does right now feel like?
Mm,
And and of course, our mind is going to want to answer that question. It's like, oh, I noticed something, and it's like it wants to put words to all of it, but it's like there's no words for right now feels like. I remind people that such a huge difference between feeling and thinking we're feeling. And so the more that we've identified, it's like the more that we're living in the, oh, this is sadness and I'm sad because of, there's a disconnection. It's like we're off in the idea instead of present with the experience of what's really going on. And so I love this question, what does right now feel like? And we can keep setting aside, it's like there is no words for this. This is a practice of feeling, of noticing, of experiencing.
mhm.
And the more that you get into this, you realize that, well, there is no words for this. This is amazing. No, that's not that word doesn't even cut it. This is the most incredible. No, that word doesn't even cut it. It's like, okay, there's no words for right now, for this present experience, for who we really are.
Mm.
And we just keep touching. What does right now feel like? What does right now feel like?
And not judging it.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many different things. And we notice the more that we open up, the more that we relax, the more that we're being present, like the more that you feel, the more that you become aware of. And it's just, it is never ending.
Yeah, and we talked about this before because I told you I have really my 3-year-old kids are really empathic. They take on a lot of the stuff of the people around them. They don't. I think there are a lot of probably people even listening to this podcast who have that same. I'm the same way. I'm sure you are too. Where before you understood energetic boundaries and all of that, you just just carried stuff for people, or you were in a room with someone and you just took it on. I mean, there's that, and then there's the compassion, and it's I think maybe what could you say what could you speak to around that and how you kind of keep your boundary or your presence, but still be with people
Yeah.
or be swimming in like the toxicity, if you will, of the environments that we're in.
Yeah. So it's not toxicity for one, I would say.
Oh
Like,
no, I'm judging it.
well, and again, it's like if we believe we live in a toxic environment, it's like what's going to be reflected back to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're so connected. We are connected to everything here. And so we're always tapped into so much more. We're always picking up on so much more. We're feeling so much more than just maybe the experience of this name and this body. And so first to realize that, when people start waking up, they realize like, oh my gosh, like how much I was trying to do stuff. I guess I can speak to my experience. Like I've always felt everybody else's bodies around me just like they're my own. And
Yeah.
so I feel other people's bodies like they're my own. It's an incredible. It's incredible. It's like it's one of the gifts when I'm working with people. I'm like, I know exactly what's going on in their body because I feel it in mine. But I didn't know that was going on. I was like, and so yeah, I used to just think that I was messed up and hurt all the time. Like there was always so much that I thought was wrong with me and my body. And as I started opening up and waking up and realizing it's like, oh my gosh, these are awarenesses. This is just awareness. This has nothing to do with this current body that I'm in. And it was amazing how you could take an awareness. I could take an awareness and turn it into my own 6-week injury, or I can have an awareness and let it be an awareness. And then it doesn't do anything. It doesn't bother me. It's like, it kind of just goes on through. And
Mm.
so that piece, it's like if we'll come back to the breath on this as well. And so for those that are very sensitive, for those that are like, that have realized that being around a bunch of people or being in certain situations becomes overwhelming. One thing that I've seen across every time is like in those situations, those people aren't breathing. And so I
Mhm.
almost saw it like this. It's like when we're not breathing, when we're holding their breath, it's almost like we become sticky. It's like things aren't moving. And so maybe it does feel like we take things on. Maybe it does feel like, we're impacted or influenced by the mood of a room. Everyone is upset. And so we go into this room and now we're feeling upset and we don't even know why. To realize that, we start bringing in more of this self-awareness, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I realize I'm tight. I realize I'm starting to kind of feel stressed out. And that's my cue to, oh, wait a minute, I'm to relax, to come back, to start moving the breath, keeping it moving. And then you can be in that same room and it's almost like aware of all of it, but affected by none of it.
And the boundary, I think when we hear the word boundary, sometimes we think barrier, like it's a barrier between myself and the experience or myself and the person. And kind of what you're saying is it's sort of I think we said in the retreat, it's kind of like you're in what'd you say, a bunch of mirrors around you or something? Who said that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, it's interesting when we say boundary or barriers. I know that I've had so many like healer clients, and there's a lot of schools of thought that it's like, oh, you have to put your bubble around you. You have to protect
Yeah,
yourself from all the stuff
I
out there.
debunked that a long time ago. It's not.
And again, it's like, what are we doing? Like we're basically putting a bubble of fear up. And so it's like, how is the universe going to show us that we're living in protection? Well, probably you're going to experience it's like getting attacked, taking things on. And so like, what if there's nothing to protect from right now? This would be like something where I'd remind everyone to take a deep breath in, because like that question will challenge your entire identity. It's like, what if there's nothing to protect from right now?
Mm.
And we notice what we feel. take a deep breath in and relax and open it up. And so it's like boundaries and barriers. It's a interesting. I can't tell you how it works because it's like it's part of all of our journeys and our experience. But it's like, what if we didn't have to protect ourselves from energies or emotions or environments, but there was a way. It's almost like every life is always asking you to be bigger.
Mm.
And if we continue to play small, it gets harder and harder and harder. So it seems like you're taking things on. It seems like you're always being attacked. It seems like well, I need all of this armor up because look at how often it comes in handy. Like I have to defend myself. And so it's that loop. It's like I have to defend myself, and that's why I need to be attacked. I used to joke around with clients sometimes. It's like if you walk into a bar dressed in full armor, ready to fight, someone else, all the other people there in armor, like this guy wants to fight. It's like, no, I don't really want to fight. Well, why are you dressed to fight then? And
Yeah.
most people, again, it's like if we're really protected, it's like you're dressed to fight.
Which
And
is more of that constriction and
yeah,
yeah.
and so it's like the boundaries thing. It's almost like instead of putting in like hard and like these hard rules of this is what I do and this is what I don't do. I'm always inviting everyone. It's like to follow our knowing, to check in with our hearts, to honor that intuition. It's like you always know what's going to serve you the most. You always know when to leave, when to stay. You always know, what to eat, what not to eat, like all of these things. And we've all totally ignored that knowing so many times.
Yeah.
But again, when it's time it's like when it's wake up time, especially when something's really bothering us, when something's really challenging us or pushing our buttons, it's like it becomes harder and harder and harder. It's getting really tough to keep fighting in this area. And so it's like, wait a minute here. It's time to let my guard down here. It's time to open up here. It's time to be with this in a new way that I've never been with it before, in a more open place.
As we've been kind of circle this all back around, because these are some awesome truth gems, it feels like the points of awakening can't happen in a states of restriction or constriction. And when those awakenings manifest themselves, we might not always be able to hold those, I guess you could say, open states, because our bodies naturally will continue to close off. So it's unrealistic to think that we're never going to constrict or resist.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that the whole point of our growth, our maturity, our evolution, whatever you want to call it, is to stay in places of openness and trust so that we can be more expansive, more at one with what is, and then thus drawing into us more protection, more power. I don't know if protection and power is the right word, but that flow of love, whatever that love is, that force is more alive in us and keeps us, and actually by its very essence keeps us protected.
Yeah, there's something bigger that's handling all of it. When we talk about, because we're all, it's like everyone's going to meet. It's like you're going to meet these emotions we didn't want to feel. We're going to meet this resistance, and it's not to open to get rid of it or control it or any of that. It's like, and it's not even to open like wide open fully. It's like, can you open up just a little bit more? Can you relax just a tiny bit more? And that's so often where so many people begin, or they've been doing it for a long time, and then it's something big, and it's like, well, right now, all I got is maybe I can open a little bit more. I can breathe a little bit deeper. And the thing is, it's like to know anytime that we're trying to control or manipulate our experience, that's just the ego. And
Right.
so the tricky thing about everything that I just said is the ego gets a hold of that and turns it in a way to do it right. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm just going to do what this guy said to get rid of all this stuff. And the thing is like our hearts, it's like who we really are is not trying to get rid of anything. Is not trying to change our lives. Is not trying to, doesn't think that there's anything wrong with everything the way that exactly is. Because if our higher selves believed that your life should be different, it would be different. And
it's like we incarnated into this to have all of this experience and to be with the mind and the ego.
Totally. Yeah. To have this incredible relationship and to keep it's almost like we just keep learning on how to, we keep getting better at it, this relationship with the mind. And
Mm,
so we don't ever get rid of the mind. And in the beginning, it seems like all of our spiritual pursuits, maybe in the beginning, that was almost like you realize, like, hey, wait, there's this part of me that's like so expansive, so much love, so much gratitude. And then there's this other part of me that's like fighting against everything, that's trying to control everything, that's judging everything. And so in the beginning, it seems like an adversarial relationship, because
mm,
to the mind, that can't understand the universe, it's like those are always going to be two different things.
right.
But, but to the being, to our knowing, to our higher self, they're the same thing.
Mm,
And so in the beginning of the spiritual journey, there's often this adversarial relationship, because the mind, it's like it starts with the mind, and it's battling back and forth. And then all of a sudden it's like we keep opening up, we keep relaxing into, it's like this mind is beautiful. This mind is totally cool, but it's not the only thing going on.
right.
And so, and we're expanding our awareness, and we're aware of so much. We're aware of what the mind is doing, and also so much more. And the more that we expand our awareness, it's almost like the less power that the mind has to hijack us.
Mm,
And so the
yeah.
beautiful practice again of breathing and relaxing, those are my favorite. It's like,
So
if you,
simple, but it's so like everything. It's all
yeah,
encompassing.
it's like if you breathe and relax, it's like you start bringing your awareness, because when people are lost in thought, it's like they're not even realize what's going on in their body most of the time. And so to just come back in and spend some time breathing, relaxing, bringing our awareness into our body, noticing what part of our body that we don't notice as much right now, and we start filling our body with this awareness. It's like we notice, it's like that awareness is expanded, and now the mind isn't as loud.
Mm,
But when our awareness is only on the mind, it's like it is the only thing going on, and all of life is lived through thought. And that will always lead to suffering, because we are so much more than just thought.
yeah, that reminds me of a quote. I think it was Carolyn Myss, and you're probably familiar with her. She wrote Anatomy of the Spirit and all kinds of things. She said, who we are is not defined through thought forms. Who we are must be felt.
I,
And that is why, people that are in the space of like trying to kind of like, okay, I've got to figure this out. I've got to have the magic formula for all healing or whatever it is. And it's almost like you're saying, it is such a moment by moment process of opening a little more, softening a little more, bringing breath in a little bit more and a little bit more incrementally. Um, that is it. you know, all of the theories, all of the pills and formulas and programs and stuff. What if they all just narrowed in on that piece where it was just like, hey, it's always been here, this breath, this
yeah,
knowing. And so what if that was the focus of the mind? And what if that was if you want to say task or the process is just coming back into what is known already and just remembering what's already there or letting that surface or be uncovered or revealed.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I could just keep talking to you.
yeah.
So I'll have to have you back on because I want to climb a little bit more into that spiritual bypassing. This is a show for women, and I'm sure there's men that are probably going to listen to, but women, we do a lot of, we over identify with what's manifested physically around us in the form of how our kids are turning out. I guess you could say like the actual results we're looking at that are shown in a physical form. We do some identity formation around that. And not that men don't do it, but we really, as women, I think we just really take it personally. And telling a woman that it's okay to be broken. This is part of the journey. Like it's okay to embody your humanity. There's a lot of resistance, at least the women that I attract into my space who are trying to up level or become more of a, I guess, influencer. They feel like they kind of have to have it all together before they can really have impact. So I'd love for us to have another conversation down the road about your thoughts on that and how we really can come to a place of acceptance of ourselves in all our forms
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all our thoughts.
totally.
Well, you have a lovely day. And thank you so much again. I'm going to direct everyone to and encourage everyone to either book a session with Zach or go to one of his retreats, because again, trying to explain it with thought and language and all those word forms is not going to do it justice. It has to be experienced. So thanks again, Zach.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an honor to be here.
You know, this discussion with Zach just reminds me that we don't awaken one time. It's a series of awakenings throughout our lifespan. And when we just can stop judging the pattern, like he's talking about, just breathe in, get that direct experience with our own soul, our own selves. That is what awakening is waking up to the divine within. True connection and true openness are what create the expansiveness that we need to heal. So thanks again to Zach. And you can find his website, ZACHREHDER.com. He's got stuff on YouTube. He's got freebies on his website and audios and all kinds of cool stuff if you want to dive deep into breath work, which I highly suggest you do because the healing is in the breath. And watch out for my emotional wholeness masterclass launching real soon. You can go to my website, CherieBurton.com, under programs and products. I think it's in both of those categories. So hope you check that out. And I will talk to you next time.